The culture is actually damn good.
From the 1970s to the mid-1990s, the Washington football team, also known as the Redskins, was one of the best organizations in the league, winning 3 Super Bowls in that time. However, since the 21st century has begun, the team has only had 1 playoff win, and along with owner Dan Snyder, they've been nothing more than a joke. How did this collapse happen? In short, a culture that actually isn't damn good. Before we begin, I just want to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button and drop a like if you enjoy what you see. We post content like this twice a week, and if you enjoy it, why not subscribe? It takes a millisecond of your time and it helps us out a ton. We appreciate it. Starting things off, for a football team to succeed, culture and chemistry actually matters a ton. And that existed all the way through the 90s with the Redskins, mostly under the head coach Joe Gibbs. Gibbs led the team to all 3 of their Super Bowl wins, even with a different quarterback each time. They epitomized tough, hard-nosed football and were extremely difficult to beat at home in the loud RFK Stadium. A lot of that great culture went away when Dan Snyder purchased the team in 1999. Since that time, the team has gone through 9 head coaches, and the only one who even remotely worked out was Gibbs in his second stint with the team, and even he retired after making the playoffs in 2007. Besides Gibbs, most of the coaches they've had, like Marty Schottenheimer, Mike Shanahan, and Norv Turner, all could not thrive in DC due to their relationship with Snyder, despite those 3 being some top coaches that the NFL has ever seen. For example, Turner had been coaching since '94 and got fired in 2000 when they had a winning record. Besides the constant instability that this created in the locker room, there was instability on the field as well. No quarterback has held the starting job in Washington for more than 3 years since Snyder purchased the team. Be it washed-up veterans like Donovan McNabb, Rex Grossman, and Mark Brunell, a banged-up RG3, and disappointments like Jason Campbell. The only decent quarterback they've had in this time that's been able to stay healthy was Kirk Cousins, and he slipped through their fingertips. Kirk was the team's only 4,000-yard passer in this past century, and nearly threw for 5,000 in 2016. The team refused to pay Cousins, which is very unlike what they usually do. More on that in a minute. And it ended up in 2 back-to-back awkward franchise tag seasons that were disappointing record-wise. After his second season on the tag, the team traded for Alex Smith, who had a much lower ceiling than Cousins and was much older. And even though that somehow started to work out before his injury, the upside was never going to be great there. There was just no point. The biggest bright spot besides Cousins was his predecessor, RG3. Dan Snyder absolutely loved RG3 and did whatever he could to get him in the draft. Now, the face of the franchise and the owner having a great relationship is not necessarily a bad thing. However, after Griffin tore his ACL in the 2012 playoffs, it turned out to be what arguably caused his downfall. According to reports, Snyder got in Griffin's head and made him desperately want to be a drop-back quarterback at all costs. Despite having a genius offensive staff that could take advantage of his mobility, Griffin told coaches Mike and Kyle Shanahan and quarterback coach Matt LaFleur to get rid of plays that had him run in the playbook. This caused a feud between the elder Shanahan and the pair of Griffin and Snyder that potentially ruined Griffin's promising career and possibly set the franchise back many years. Besides quarterback, the team had mishandled free agent signings from the moment Snyder took over the team. It seemed as if the Redskins liked throwing money at players way past their prime who had no chance of performing up to their contract. In 2000, they signed a very old Deion Sanders to a 7-year contract, who retired just the following season. At the same time, they signed Bruce Smith and Jeff Jordan, who were, yup, you guessed it, past their prime. The Redskins clearly did not learn from their mistakes and spent a boatload of money on washed-up players once again in 2006. The Redskins paid $30 million to Adam Archuleta, who was quite good for the Rams, but did not fit the scheme of the Redskins. He started just 7 games for Washington. Antoine Randall was paid $30 million over 7 years. He spent just 4 years with the team and caught only 8 touchdowns and racked up just over 2,200 yards. And if you thought that offseason couldn't get any worse for the Redskins, you were wrong. The Redskins traded a 3rd and 4th round pick for Brandon Lloyd. Lloyd has 374 yards and 0 touchdowns in his time in Washington. In more recent times, they paid a 1-year wonder in Josh Norman a ton of money, but that pales in comparison to the worst contract of them all, Albert Haynesworth. Haynesworth was a great nose tackle with the Titans, and in the 2009 free agency, he got paid over $100 million to join a Redskins scheme that he just didn't fit. It became clear he showed a lack of effort, culminating in this Monday Night Football play against the Eagles when he got ripped apart by John Gruden for not getting up.
And I realize it's a tough night and it's a rainy night, but you're down on the ground, you have to get up, and you got to continue to chase Michael Vick. The play's still going on, and that's not good to put that on tape.
He lasted just 2 seasons in Washington, despite being signed for another 7-year-long contract. The Redskins just love handing out 7-year deals. Ironically, his quarterback at the time was Donovan McNabb. After being traded from the Eagles, he signed a 5-year contract extension before that Monday night game in 2010. He would get traded to the Vikings the following offseason. Clearly, the wrong people were in the building for the team formerly known as the Redskins. The medical staff was clearly not taking proper care of players after so many mishandled cases. This came through to the public in 2019 when Trent Williams told his story after holding out for an entire season. The team misdiagnosed what turned out to be a form of cancer. Williams was furious, as he had every right to be. He made it clear that he did not want to play for this dysfunctional organization any longer, and he requested a trade. His wish was granted during the 2020 NFL Draft, where he was traded to San Francisco. Oh, and speaking of bad treatment for your employees, how about those 15 female employees that got sexually harassed? You sure that culture is damn good, Bruce? As much as your former boss might like to think so, he was not exactly a likable guy. As longtime football writer Peter King put it, no one wants to work for him or with him. It's a miracle he found a very good man, Ron Rivera, to coach his team. Although Bruce and Snyder weren't directly called out, it's quite hard to believe they did not know this was going on. Emily Applegate was very vocal about this situation, and said that Snyder would flip out over the smallest things and would curse and use derogatory slurs towards her. Applegate claims it was the most miserable experience of her life. She was actually told by the director of personnel, Alex Santos, to wear less clothing. That's disgusting! Oh, and last, but certainly not least, the fan base. What was once one of the most passionate fan bases in sports, Redskins fans really stopped caring to put up with this mess. In recent seasons, most fans have just stopped showing up to games, and when there are many fans of the games, they tend to be the opposing team's fans. It's hard to blame them in a sense. Their team just hasn't been competitive in recent memory. They have nothing to cheer for. On the bright side, the clearly offensive Redskins name is finally retired. Granted, fans who collected Redskins items for years aren't going to be too happy with this decision, but truthfully, this should have happened a long time ago. It's an offensive name, and I get that there's a legacy and a storied franchise behind it, but now more than ever, I think it's time for a rebrand. This team has been so awful for the last 20 years that a new name, logo, and jerseys may be the fresh start this franchise needed. But the way things are looking with Dan Snyder running the organization, it might just be the same old song and dance. Oh, the Washington Football Club, how I am so sorry.